Andrew, the CEO of Kirkland, Mr. Smith, called my name. He furrowed his brow and stared intently at my face. Andrew Nichols, he repeated my name loudly. Cold sweat trickled down my back. Everyone in the department was looking at me with puzzled expressions. I hurriedly tried to stop Mr. Smith from speaking further, but he blurted out, "You don't know." He is. Revealing my identity. However, the surprising turn of events continued. My beautiful colleague, Michelle, let out a small gasp. "No way. My name is Andrew Nichols, 43 years old. I work part-time at a major design company. There are times in life when things just don't go well. I'm in such a phase right now. If I were to compare it to surfing, it's like waiting endlessly for a good wave that never comes, just floating around. I hope I can ride a great wave someday." "Hey, Andrew." I was spacing out a bit when my manager, Kelvin, called out to me. "Yes, what is it?" When I looked up, Kelvin said without even looking at me, "I've put the design data in the shared folder. Print it out and check the contents." Nodding at the order from Kelvin, who was 6 years younger than me, I proceeded to print it out. As I heard the sound of the paper being ejected from the printer and was about to stand up, I heard a woman's voice. "Andrew, since I'm going that way, I'll take it." Looking towards the printer, I saw Michelle smiling beside it. Kelvin clicked his tongue quietly and looked at Michelle. "Michelle, you should let Andrew handle the chores." His voice was not sharp and rough as it was with me, but rather a sweet, coaxing tone. Kelvin's likes and dislikes are clearly evident in his tone of voice. Michelle furrowed her eyebrows slightly. "I just finished printing my stuff too." She replied briefly and started walking towards me. With her beautiful, medium-length black hair, she is a stunning beauty. Petite and slim, her figure is fantastic. It's no wonder Kelvin can't help but be enamored. "Here, this is Kelvin's design. Please check it. And, could you also take a look at mine?" I took the 2 sheets of paper and placed Kelvin's on his desk. "The colors and overall layout, what do you think?" I'm stuck but can't pinpoint exactly what it is. I scrutinized the design. It was clean and had a warm feel. Her designs are always so sophisticated, and I learn a lot from them. "What did your client request?" Just as I asked that, Kelvin interrupted. "Michelle, you don't need to ask an old part-timer, I can check it for you." Indeed, in this situation, it would be more appropriate to have the boss review it. However, Michelle said, "I'd like to hear various opinions. I'd like you to do the final check, so please give me a little more time." And bowed politely. "Is that so? Final check? Okay, then. It's better not to look at it now." "Got it," Kelvin nodded, seemingly satisfied. Michelle is adept at handling Kelvin. She chooses her words carefully and always responds with a soft smile. Her words and actions are devoid of any thorns and captivate everyone, regardless of gender. She bowed to Kelvin once more and then turned back to me. My client wants something approachable and friendly. With that in mind, I took another look at the design. In that case, the logo and the title part could be a bit rounder and softer in font. Also, the color scheme could be a tone brighter. And this part would stand out if you added a bold blue or a darker shade. Michelle let out a soft sigh, and I snapped back to reality. I seem to have talked too much. Indeed. Andrew, you're amazing. Thank you. I bowed my head repeatedly in response. No. I'm sorry, I'm just an amateur. As I said that, Michelle looked at me thoughtfully. An amateur. Her large almond-shaped eyes pierced through me. I was flustered and quickly tried to explain. Well, I just like looking at designs. That's why I ended up here as a part-timer. Why did I join the company as a part-timer at this age? People have asked me that countless times. Each time, I explained that I've always loved looking at flyers and posters. Michelle sighed, seemingly giving up. Your eye for detail is impressive. I'd love to see a flyer you've designed someday, she said with a smile before returning to her desk. Although she mentioned wanting to hear various opinions from some staff, Michelle got straight to work. Feeling a bit puzzled, I started checking Kelvin's flyer. I sighed. As usual, there were many typos. The design was sophisticated, intellectual, and excellent. It perfectly matched the client's expectations. However, it seemed Kelvin wasn't too interested in the content, leading to numerous mistakes in the text. I called out to Kelvin. There are some errors in the content again." Before I could finish speaking, Kelvin interrupted. "Just fix it as you see fit." I nodded slightly and began correcting the data. A few days later, when I arrived at work in the morning, the department was buzzing with excitement. As I tilted my head in confusion, Michelle rushed over. Her cheeks were unusually flushed, and her eyes were sparkling with excitement. "Mr. Smith, the CEO of Kirkland, from the UK headquarters, is coming for a visit next month." "I see, that certainly is a big deal." Kelvin was visibly excited. Everyone in the department was abuzz with the possibility of Mr. Smith seeing their flyers. Kelvin was talking about posting all the flyers we had made on a whiteboard. It had nothing to do with me. I just quietly continued my usual tasks. However, I made sure to clean every nook and cranny thoroughly. I wanted to avoid any non-work-related criticisms. Though the visit was said to be a month away, I immediately started cleaning the break room. And a month later, Mr. Smith arrived at our US branch. Apparently, he was going to inspect each floor in order. Everyone was nervously working that day. Michelle was trying to maintain a calm demeanor, but it was clear she was excited, which was a little endearing. A few hours later, Mr. Smith finally appeared in our department. Our department manager, Kyle, and Kelvin welcomed him with stiff smiles. While I was preparing the tea in the break room, which was likely being served on other floors as well, Mr. Smith greeted everyone with a smile, causing a stir. Glancing around the department, I saw him attaching a large poster to the whiteboard. The whiteboard mainly displayed several of Kelvin's meticulously designed flyers, but most of them ended up hidden behind the large poster. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. Mr. Smith seemed to be questioning what was wrong with the poster. The department was abuzz, and murmured discussions began, but few people spoke up clearly. Among them, Kelvin said, "Is it the color scheme? Perhaps a brighter palette?" It was impressive that he could speak up in this atmosphere. However, the answer was no. Mr. Smith was becoming increasingly displeased. He furrowed his brows, seemingly wondering why no one could figure out something so simple. I quickly wrote a note while serving tea, and handed it to Michelle. As Mr. Smith stared intently at everyone, I discreetly placed the tea on the table. Without looking at me, he gulped down the tea. I was relieved that I had made the tea slightly lukewarm. Everyone was shrinking under his demeanor when suddenly, "Yes." Michelle timidly raised her hand. Mr. Smith fixed his gaze on Michelle. "That design, it resembles the one released by S Company in 2021. Mr. Smith's face lit up, and he was about to say something when Michelle added. As Andrew pointed out in his note, Michelle said, showing the note I had written, causing everyone to gasp in surprise. I furrowed my brow. I really shouldn't take credit for this myself. Michelle looked at me and stuck out her tongue playfully. Mr. Smith looked around and, realizing that it was I who had just served the tea, grabbed my hand and repeatedly said, "Great." This was a test, after all. It was about whether those handling designs were properly checking other companies' works. For someone like me, it was a famous flyer since I love looking at various posters and flyers. But it seemed difficult for everyone else. Mr. Smith shook my hands vigorously, making me dizzy. And suddenly, "Andrew," he said my name. He furrowed his brow and stared intently at my face. "Andrew Nichols," he repeated my name loudly. Cold sweat trickled down my back. Everyone in the department was looking at me with puzzled expressions. I hurriedly tried to stop Mr. Smith from speaking further, but he blurted out excitedly, "Don't you know? He's the famous painter Andrew Nichols. I can't believe we met here. I have loved drawing since I was a child. My passion led me to attend a high school specializing in art, then to an art college in New York, where I spent every day painting. Initially, I excelled in landscape painting, but as I studied more, I became interested in abstract art. In particular, the style of self-expressive abstraction, which involves conveying one's inner self through creative activity, deeply moved me in my youth. After graduating from college, I went to the UK alone. The UK is a famous place for action painting. Action painting involves splashing or dripping paint onto a canvas to create a piece. Many artists create their works with refined movements. In this method, the act itself is often considered more important than the finished painting. I was attracted not to action painting itself but to painting in front of an audience and having them evaluate it. I wanted to challenge myself to see how my paintings would be received in the UK. With that feeling, I went to the UK. In the beginning, it was tough. I heard comments like, "Give me my time back and it's boring." My style of painting abstract art in front of an audience was a bit too subdued compared to the flashy action painting. However, I did not give up. I believed that if I kept painting, the path would open up. 6 months after arriving in the UK, my work started to gain recognition. The audience grew, and sometimes people would even purchase my completed paintings. And just a few months before my working holiday visa expired, a few people who liked my paintings suggested I apply for an artist visa. Recommended by several agents, I obtained the artist visa and began taking on work that those agents required. Sometimes, I even held solo exhibitions. The value of my paintings gradually increased. Some people bought them as investments. If recognized by prominent figures, even a currently inexpensive painting could skyrocket in value someday. Though there was no guarantee that my paintings would achieve that, my work steadily gained more fans. However, I gradually began to lose confidence in my paintings. My art was created in collaboration with the audience. I would listen to their reactions and paint something that exceeded their imaginations. For example, if I painted a spot white and someone in the audience said, "That should be pink," I would imagine what that white spot would look like if it were pink. Then, I would think, "No. This spot needs this color," and apply a deep purple paint. The audience would cheer. The deep purple was more fitting than the white or the suggested pink. That's how my paintings were completed. There were also intense debates with my agents. Through these discussions, my paintings were continually refined. But then, at some point, people stopped giving me feedback on my paintings. "It's unthinkable to give you suggestions." Every time I heard that, I felt unsteady. Is this really okay? Is this painting truly perfect as it is? Is there no color that could surpass this? Little by little, my heart sank as if entangled in darkness, and I eventually lost the ability to paint. No matter how much I painted, I couldn't figure out what was right. I bowed my head to the agents who had patiently watched over me and returned to the US. For a while, I spent my savings idly. Seeing my state, my family asked me to draw something for them. I knew they were trying to give me a push. But I couldn't muster the desire to paint. It was my niece who saved me. My sister's child had turned 3. She asked me to draw colorful cartoon characters. Unable to ignore a child's request, I mimicked drawing cartoon characters, and she beamed with joy, her eyes sparkling. It had been a long time since I'd seen such a face. Drawing these colorful cartoon characters was fun. As an experiment, I painted a red outfit black. She complained that it looked like a villain, but after a while, she asked me to draw the black-colored character again. When I asked why, she said, "This black one's cool too." Apparently, she had grown to like it over time. As I continued doing this, I found myself able to face the canvas again. But I was still far from the passion I had in my youth. I wanted to create passionate paintings once more. Then my sister suggested that if I couldn't paint for myself, I should paint for others. Painting for others, it was an idea I hadn't considered much. After a few months of indecision, I applied for a part-time job at a design company. Working as a designer didn't feel quite right to me. I thought that being surrounded by someone else's creations might bring about some change in my awareness. With that feeling, I applied, and here I am now. Encouraged by Mr. Smith, I ended up talking about my past. Everyone looked at me with eyes full of disbelief. Mr. Smith handed me his phone and spoke with a smile. "Look at this painting. This is one I bought during a street performance and had it framed." I widened my eyes. Honestly, I didn't remember when I painted it. But from the style, it was probably from within my first year in the UK. At that time, after completing a piece, I would ask the audience if anyone wanted to buy it. Some paintings didn't sell at all. This painting had been purchased by the young Mr. Smith. Don't say you've lost confidence. I became your fan because of this painting. Since then, I've bought several pieces I wanted and cherished them at home," Mr. Smith said while showing the photo of my first painting to everyone in the department. As my eyes welled up with emotion at that moment. "No way!" Michelle's small scream echoed through the department. Michelle rushed to her desk, rummaged through her bag, and came up to me. "Here." She handed me a pass case. Both Mr. Smith and I were astonished when we saw its contents. It contained a photo of the same painting that Mr. Smith had first bought. I took this photo during a family trip to the UK. I was moved and asked the buyer if I could take a picture. They kindly agreed. Michelle said nostalgically, and Mr. Smith beamed. That was definitely me. What a miracle! The three of us met nearly 20 years ago in the UK, far from here, he said, giving us a hearty hug. Both Michelle and I turned bright red from the embrace. He sternly ordered me to create new works and then hurried off to his next destination. He invited me to dinner when he would come back to the US to pick up my new work. I humbly nodded. Everyone in the department had witnessed the exchange. After Mr. Smith left, I was bombarded with questions. My past was just as I had told it. I had already explained why I joined the company as a part-timer. Still, their curiosity seemed endless, and they wouldn't let me go. At that moment, Michelle quietly stepped in between everyone and said, "This is the brochure I was asked to create yesterday. Andrew, could you try making it?" I furrowed my brow. "But, isn't this a job for a full-time employee?" Michelle persisted, holding out the specifications. "You need a challenge, right?" she asked, and I timidly nodded. Here I was, 43 years old, being guided by a 35-year-old woman. It was quite a pathetic sight. Instead of painting freely, I was to create a brochure according to the client's wishes. This was surprisingly difficult. At the same time, it was fun. The impression changes drastically with a single color or font. I had noticed this while checking the works made by other employees, but creating something from scratch felt different and enjoyable. The next day, I showed the completed brochure to Michelle. We moved to the meeting space to focus, comparing the printed material with the data on my laptop. Michelle pointed at the photo in the brochure. "This photo, can it be more impactful? For example, changing the way it's cropped, As Michelle pondered, an idea came to me. In that case, maybe we could change the style. I adjusted the style of the photo using the software on my computer, and Michelle exclaimed in delight. "Yes! This is perfect. It matches the image exactly. The layout, colors, fonts, and text arrangement." I made changes while seeking Michelle's opinion on each one. These changes dramatically improved the brochure. It was fun. As I worked intensely on the computer, Michelle smiled beside me. "This is the kind of collaboration you were looking for, right?" Her words made me look at her intently. Having third-party feedback on my work. Listening to those opinions and further enhancing the piece. Yes, that's right, it was a very valuable interaction. When I expressed my gratitude, Michelle smiled. "Well, could you show me how you paint sometime? My opinions might not be very stimulating, but..." Michelle looked down, searching for words. "The performance I saw in the UK, it moved me, and I'd like to see it again, if possible." It's just a genuine request. Michelle's face gradually turned red. I smiled. "Of course, I'd be honored. I really like your designs, Michelle. I'm very interested to see how my painting would evolve based on your input." Michelle's eyes widened, and she covered her mouth. At that moment, I caught a small voice. I'd like to see it too. When did he get here?" Kelvin, who had been talking quietly in the meeting space with us, suddenly appeared. Michelle mumbled, "You should learn to read the room." And Kelvin seemed deflated. Although he wasn't the most pleasant person, I felt a bit sorry for him knowing his feelings for Michelle. "Well, if I ever get to the point where I can perform in front of people again, I'd love to show it to everyone in the department," I said. Kelvin forced a weak smile and replied, "I'll look forward to that," before leaving. It's clear that the real reason Kelvin came here wasn't for my art, but for Michelle. She's 8 years younger than me. Although he probably just has a pure interest in my work, Kelvin will have to reconsider his attitude if he wants to be noticed by her. It's a bit pitiful, really. A few days later, I invited Michelle to my studio. Nothing had yet been created in this studio. After returning to the US, I rented a small but high-ceilinged apartment to use as a studio to break out of my slump. It was a space that could be used as a studio. However, no matter how many times I picked up a brush here, I couldn't create a satisfactory piece. Standing in front of the canvas, I froze. What should I paint? I had been pondering this for days, but nothing came together. My abstract paintings were heavily influenced by my inner emotional landscape. My current feelings? The encounter with Mr. Smith? The miracle of the three of us meeting in the UK 20 years ago? None of it felt right. I glanced back. Though my painting style didn't involve splashing paint around, I had instructed Michelle to wear something that could get dirty just in case. Today, Michelle was dressed in a white shirt and jeans. If the paint splashes, it might look stylish. Seeing her blush and smile, an image formed in my mind. And a few hours later, my painting was complete. This, if it's not too presumptuous. Michelle's voice was trembling. Is this my image? I nodded, blushing. It was no wonder she noticed. I had incorporated all of her suggestions during the process. However, there was one part one insisted on. The heart in the center. I had a clear vision for its color. A gentle green and a strong red, and my feelings are in there too. I surprised even myself. I had fallen in love with Michelle. It became clear to me as I painted. This love might be unrequited. But that was okay. That realization gave me the strength to move forward. I had regained the confidence to paint. Would you accept this painting? It might be strange for an old guy like me to put my feelings into a painting. Michelle shook her head vigorously. I'm happy. I like you too, Andrew. Her unexpected reply made my eyes widen in shock. What? But I'm already 43. Michelle's eyes, brimming with tears, looked at me. Working with you, I was drawn to your kindness. I also thought there was something special about you. I recalled my interactions with Michelle at work. When I asked for your advice once, it was so precise that my flyer turned out better than ever. I thought you must have some design experience. But when I found out you were the street performer who moved me in UK, my feelings for you grew even stronger. Michelle took my hand. I thought I wasn't worthy. Is this painting really your feelings? Is it really me? Tears welled up in her eyes. I felt the same. I never thought someone as kind and beautiful as you would like me. Until just now, I thought this love was impossible. Are you sure about me? Michelle smiled at me. And as she smiled, beautiful tears streamed down her cheeks. I gently wiped them away with my index finger and hugged her. A few years later, I was painting quietly in my studio in the UK. There was a knock on the door. It's almost time to get ready. It was my wife, Michelle, peeking in timidly. I turned and smiled. Michelle's eyes were fixed on the painting behind me. It's beautiful. Today's theme was encounter. Since the day we got together, we've been through various encounters and moved to the UK as a married couple. This move was facilitated by Mr. Smith, who arranged for Michelle to transfer to the UK headquarters. After that, I quit my part-time job and started painting again. When Michelle was first approached about the transfer, she showed a sad expression and said, "They probably thought if they transferred me, you would come along since Mr. Smith is a huge fan of you. They don't really need me." I slowly shook my head. A company CEO like him would never make a transfer decision based on such calculations. Your skills were recognized, Michelle. Be confident. Just as I said, Michelle is now showing remarkable achievements in the UK. Her unique softness and sensitivity are rare and highly valued in the UK. Michelle's status has steadily risen, and now she's on a first-name basis with Mr. Smith, saying, "Michael should be arriving soon. So hurry and get changed," and inviting him to our home parties. Our current life is all thanks to that fateful encounter. This painting will be perfect for decorating a corner of today's home party. I kissed my beloved wife on the forehead, took the painting, and opened the door from the studio to the living room with a peaceful heart.